We're now up to Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Beis, and we're offering a second interpretation of Rabbi Elazar's principle in our Mishnah when you find that the pairs were avudim and you have to be choshesh l'mafreya, besides Rabbi Yochanan's opinion of Eis Leishal Abedika when he discovered that the pairs were lost, another shita Rabbi Elazar, again Rabbi Elazar the Amora, that may Eis Leishal Hadnocha, from the time that he designated these pairs and he put them in a safe place, from that time we count forward 24 hours. So let's say, for example, on a Sunday morning, he placed these peiros or the mos in a designated protected area. From Monday morning, 24 hours and onwards, all the way till the B'dika, we're choshesh that the peiros were already destroyed, they were lost, the mos were gone. So again, now Meis Leis is going forward instead of backwards. According to Rabbi Yochanan, Meis Leis goes backwards. From the time of the B'dika, we calculate 24 hours l'mafreya. But according to this sheet of Rabbi Elazar, what we're doing is we're going back to the time of the Hanocha, and we're adding 24 hours. That's the safe period. But after that 24 hours, a day later, from then on, we're choshesh that the pairs were lost. And now the Gemara is going to try to prove the sheet of Rabbi Yochanan from our Mishnah. It's 9. In our Mishnah it says, Im avdu, if he checks the peiros and he finds they were gone, hareza choshesh meis leis. Now, Bishlei l'man the Amar according to Rabbi Yochanan, meis leis shel b'dika shapir. We understand the language of the Mishnah. If it says choshesh meis leis, it means l'mafreya from the time of the b'dika for 24 hours. And the mashmos in the language choshesh meis leis is Yom Echad. Meis leis means one period of time, 24 hours. Whereas according to Rabbi Elazar, Elaman Yom Meis Leis Sh'anocha, Hai Meis Leis Ad Meis Leis Mi Bohele. We go back day, back, and we're choshesh for all those days until we get to Meis Leis of the Hanocha. Kasha. So Gemara says that the language of our Mishnah is very different. Now, our Mishnah says that we're choshesh for meis leis and nothing more than meis leis. Divrei Rabbi Elazar. Amar Rabbi Elazar. Again, the Amor Rabbi Elazar. Halukim olav chaver val Rabbi Elazar. I'm going to prove to you from a sugya in mikvah that we're not somech on chazaka against Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar is somech on chazak. He's only choshesh for the 24-hour period. But the Rabbanan, according to what we're learning now, are choshesh without a limitation, and they don't rely on the original chazak. This now we learned in the second parak of mikvahos, mikvah shenimnad v'nimtza chaser. Today you check the mikvah, you find out there's no 40 sa. It's less than 40 sa. It's not royal tefillah. Is kol ataro shenasu al gabav l'mafreya. All the truma and the taros that were dunked into this mikvah, and these trumas and masros were in kelim tmeim, and we were told them l'tara b'mikvah. This mikvah, which now we know is chasel mafreya, from the time of B'dika, we go back, and it's all tamei. Even though we have a principle called Safik Tumishus Rabim Spekotar, that principle is not going to apply in this case because we have a vadai now. Right, the basic halacha of Safik Tumishus Rabim Spekotar is based on Cheskes Tara, but here we have the opposite. We have a Cheskes Tameh because the Kalim were Tmeim when they went into the mikvah, and Tmeos means that we're now positing a Mishnah against Rabbi Elazar in our Mishnah. So the Gemara says, Pshita the Chalukim, okay, fine. It's very nice analysis, but I don't need you to tell me that. Was there another way of interpreting it in such a way that we could reconcile the two Mishnayos? Malditem, I would have said, if not for Rabbi Elazar, that Mailam Afreya, that when it says in the Mishnah of Mikvos, that all the Taros and the Trumas Masros are Tmeos L'Mafreya, it means Meis Leis. My friend means up to a certain point, not endlessly. Kamash Malan, that's what we have here from Rabbi Lazar. And by the way, this Rabbi Lazar, the Amora, is called Rabbi Lazar ben Pedas, Rashi points out. And he's telling me that Lamafreya in the Rabbanan's frame of reference means until the original Bedika, in which we established that there are 40 sa. So let's say a month ago, we checked the mikveh, we found 40 sa. Today, a month later, we find that there's less than 40 sa. All the taras and all the trumas and all the masks that he put into that mikveh and kelim tmeim, they're all tamei from the time a month ago when he did the bedika. And that's what's called in the Lashon HaShas chazaka dehashta. There's a chazaka demeikara, which tells you to go forward, status quo, and then there's a chazaka dehashta, which means that whatever you see now, we go backwards in time. Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'shlosha prakim, we check the yayin. Tana. Now we have to know there's something called tekufos, which are based on the solar calendar. Like, for example, there's tekufas Tishrei, tekufas Teves, tekufas Nisan, tekufas Tammuz. The Chodshei Hashana, the months of the year, go by the moled of the Levana. That's the lunar calendar. Now, since the tekufos depend upon the mahalach of the chama, of the sun, the moadim, on the other hand, are determined by the mahalach of the levana, the moon. Sometimes the tekufa of Tammuz could be extended as late as after Chag HaSukkos. So that we're about to enter into tekufas Tammuz now, right? And tekufas Tammuz should end somewhere around Tishrei. But to go all the way till mid-Tishrei and after Sukkot, that's very rare. And now we're saying the following, that Tana, we learned in a Brisa, that Bekidum, okay, we're all discussing this Ruach Kadim, Shel Motzoi Chag Shel Tkufa. So what it means is that only if the Ruach was, Ruach Mizrachis, the eastern wind, was blowing after the Chag passed, and we're already in Tkufas Tishrei, then you have to be boded. But if the Tkufas Tammuz continues all the way until after Sukkot, that Ruach Kadim that blows after the Chag, that's not going to be mazik the yayin, and you don't need bedika. Tanya, we learned in the Brisa Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'shlosha prakim ochrim es hatvua. There are 3 periods of time in which it's a good idea to sell your tvua. This one you can have what's called a very high demand, and the price goes up. Number 1, lifnei hazera, before the period of sowing, of planting. People need tvua to use it for planting, for zriya. Ubishas hazera, and certainly during the onas hazriya itself, maybe people realize that they didn't plant enough, so they're looking around to buy zera. Okay, this he says in the note here in the name of Tosfos, that's sof onas hazriya. And finally, ubifros hapesach. Fros always means to split it. Like, for example, sholi v'dor shebilchas hachag shloshim yom, kodem hachag, 30 days, and pros hachag would be 15 days before the chag. And ubishlosha prokim mochrim esayayin. There are 3 periods of time that are very precipitate, very good for the selling of wine. Number 1 is before Pesach, number 2 before Tzeres, so it's 15 days before Pesach, 15 days before Shavuos, and before Chag, 15 days before Chag HaSukkos. And this is because Bismanim Elu Kulam Konim Yayin L'Chag. People are out there buying wine for the holidays. B'Shemen Me'atzeres V'Elu. And the good time to sell shemen and get a good price for it on the market is from Chag HaShavuos and on. So why are you telling me these zmanim? Are there any halachic implications, or are you just giving me an eitzah tova on a business acumen level? Omar Rava v'Tamer Apop. Yes, there is an afkamina in halacha l'shutfim. 2 people are partners in merchandise, and if one of the 2 partners wants to make a sale, he's got to get the consent of the other partner. But in these zmanim, that shutaf is allowed to sell the Zroim on for a high price without even asking permission from the shutaf. Mikan v'elech mai. Gemara asks, and what if these manim pass by? Can he sell it without the consent of the other shutaf? Amarava kol yoma pirkehu. from this time and on, every day is considered the Zman, and you can sell it. So we wait until the beginning of the Zriya period, etc., etc., and then from that period of on, Rava says you can sell. Now we get into a little bit of an agadita regarding the Ruach Kodim that we spoke about. And we just have to know that there are hot winds and north winds, there are winds that cool off the heat and winds that raise the level of the heat. It depends on if it comes from the north or from the south. And we start with the pasuk in Yonah. Vayhikiz ruach hashemesh, vayimana elokim ruach kodim charishis. So when the sun came out, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought a wind coming from the east, which is called charishis. My charishis. We don't know what the etymology is and the meaning of the word charishis. I'm Rabbi Yehuda, and the Gemara is going to slug up Rabbi Yehuda, but Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion, B'shoshem hasheves osa tlomim tlomim. It's such a powerful wind that by Yam, when it goes over the water of the ocean, it makes lines, so to speak, just like tlomim are furrows, when you thresh the ground, right, the charisha system, you make furrows in the ground. So this wind is so strong that it creates pathways in the ocean. Next time I'm in Netanya, I'll look for it. Amar le Rabba says to Rabbi Yehuda, no, this can't be pshat in the pasuk. If you're telling me that the word charishis refers to charisha b'yam, hainu dechsiv, what are you going to do with the next part of the pasuk? Vatech hashemesh al rosh Yonah vayis aleph. I mean, we're talking about a very hot wind, such that Yonah fainted from the wind. And according to your pshat in the pasuk, you're talking about the very strong wind, but it's not necessarily a hot wind. So how are you going to explain why Yonah is fainting away from the heat? Elam or Rabba says a different pshat in the pasuk. It's not referring to a ruach that makes these tlomim, these lines in the sea, but rather b'shosh and masheves, when this eastern wind blows during the hot season, mishatekes kol haruchos mipaneh. All ruach, as a general rule, with the exception of ruach mizrachis, bring cold air. You cool off. It's like a fan. However, there's one wind that comes from the east, and Rabbi says it's so powerful that any cool air that you get from the fanning of the other winds is completely neutralized. And therefore, the word charishis comes from the lashon of shaket. It quiets down. So it quiets down or neutralizes the cold air that's coming from other directions. And now I can understand the pasuk in Iyov. Asher begodecha chamim v'hashket eretz midarom. Rav Tachlaf, Rav Bar, Rav Chizda, Rav Chizda. Emosai begodecha chamim. So we're talking about your garments are hot. B'shoshe hishkit eretz midarom. In other words, there's a wind that comes from the south, which cools off, and the wind that comes from the east is going to neutralize the power of the wind that comes from the south. And it's mashtikas tzinas haruach hadromis. So that's the power of the ruach mizrachis, that it neutralizes the cooling off power of the ruach dromis. So this eastern wind brings hot air to the entire world. Rav Huna, Rav Chizda, Yasve, they were sitting on the road. Olafi Azil Gneva Alayhu, a man by the name of Gneva passed them and came to greet them. Omar, Chad L'Chavre. Now this Gneva was a very clever fellow and quite a Talmud Chacham. So Nekum Akami to Bar Oryanhu, they asked each other as they saw him coming, approaching, should we stand in front of him? L'Kavo Talmud Chacham. The other one said, we don't know who it was, it's either Rav Huna or Rav Chizda. No. I'm not going to stand in front of this guy, Gneva. Why? Makami Palga Nekum? Alga means to split. Split means a machlokas. This man did not have the midos tovos, the good traits of a Talmid Chacham. And I'm quoting now the Meiri, Talmid Chacham she'eno mitzuyon v'midos ein sharach chachamim chayovim linog bo kovod shel tamidei chachamim. So it's an all or nothing proposition. There are two elements in generating the status of a Talmid Chacham and requiring the mitzvah of kovod for a Talmid Chacham. Number one is his chachma, that means his yidiyas haTorah, and number two, his midos. Fascinating halacha, very ethical piece of Gemara. In any event, adahachi. Now, in the meantime, while they're debating this issue whether they should stand for him, asa ilu gabai, who already came close to them, and he realized that they weren't standing for him. So he justified it in his mind that he figured, you know what, they're probably learning a tifa sugya, as we would say. What was on your mind that you were so preoccupied that you wouldn't stand in front of me, in front of a Talmid Chacham? Amulei beruchos. We're trying to understand the different winds, and what they really meant was, we're trying to understand your wind, Geneva. They didn't say that, of course. Do you have the ruach of gasus? Or do you have a ruach nemucha? Amalahu, hachi amar Rab Chanan, bar Rava, amar Rav, arba ruchos menashos b'chol yom. There are four winds that come from four different directions on a daily basis. Now Rashi quotes a sugya in Brachos Taf Gimel. Ruach Mizrach is the first 6 hours of the day, and Ruach Dromis are the last 6 hours of the day. The Ruach Ma'aravis are the first 6 hours of the night, and the Ruach Tzfonis are the last 6 hours of the night. So we divide up the day, 24 hours into 4. That's 6 hours for each onuf, each period. And there's another Ruach that dominates in each one of the onufs. The Ruach Tzfonis menasheves im kulon. In other words, each Ruach has a certain high or low temperature that's not good, but there's a Ruach that always accompanies all the other Ruachos in order to neutralize the Chom or the Tzina, and that's called Ruach Tzfonis. So we really pray for the Ruach Tzfonis. Shel Molikein, if not for the additional power of the Ruach Tzfonis, Ein Olam Miskayim Fil Sha'achas. The other Ruchos are so powerful that the world would not survive. The Ruach Tromis, but of all the four winds, the most catastrophic wind or devastating wind is the Ruach Tromis, Koshamikua. The Moli Ben Netz is a certain malach that flies around. He's called like an eagle, and Ma'amida, and he's going to neutralize, stand in front of the Ruach Tromis and neutralize it. Machreves kol olam. That's the power of this wind. Shenemar, we see it in Eov. Amin binoscha yavor netz yifros knofav l'seimon. So we're darshaning the word yaver, based on the pasuk in Dvarim Lamed Beis Yisrael at Vroso. Pirusho kanaf, it means a wing. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu asks Eov, do you, because of your wisdom, hakanaf shel malach netz, do you realize, based on your insight, that the malach, which is called netz, is mames haruach haba mitemon, that's coming from the south. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Yasve, they were sitting together on the road. Havicholifi Ozil, and now they see this tremendously beautiful, like Cinderella, before midnight, this beautiful carriage. And who was inside the carriage? It was none other than Rav Nachman Bar Yaakov, the Yosef Beguar Kodev Dahav. They couldn't see him and they couldn't identify him because this beautiful golden wagon had Paras Aleya Sabola de Karse. It had a kisui, a covering made of a bad that was dyed in the bluish color. And as a result of this covering over the agola, they didn't know who was sitting there. Rava Azal Gabe. Rava figured this must be the Reish Galusa. I mean, who would have such pomp and ceremony? It's like Buckingham Palace. But Rav Nachman Yitzhak Azal Gabe. Why? Why didn't Rav Nachman Yitzhak pay his respect to the Reish Galusa? He said, no. Omar. Rava needs a good, to find favor in the eyes of the Reish Galusa. He needs their tovos. I know Lo Tzrichlu. I am the son-in-law of the Reish Galusa, of the Exilarch, and therefore I don't have to butter him up in any way. I don't need him, to show him how much I worship him. But then they saw who was it that was sitting inside the carriage? None other than Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. I'm sorry, it was none other than Rav Nachman bar Yaakov. Ozil Gabe. Now Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak goes to greet the great Amora Rav Nachman bar Yaakov. Ozil Gabe, when he got to him, Gali Ledare, there was an eastern wind that made it very, very hot, and he starts like rolling up his sleeves. Omar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak makes a declaration, Shadia Noshiv, the wagon itself is like causing wind, and this ruach chama is coming from the evil forces, the shaded, because again this was the ruach mizrachis and it was a very hot wind. Omar Rav Hachi Omar Rav. This is what I heard from Rav regarding the eastern wind. She'isha, three different things. Like we're going to have Rav, we're going to have Shmuel, we're going to have Rabbi Yochanan. Each one of them are telling you the catastrophic impact of the eastern wind. Rav says Ishma Pelispo. She will miscarry. Shmuel Omar Afilu Margola Shabiyamar Akevispo. It has such a powerful impact, this Ruach Mizrachis, that even a pearl in the sea will get ruined by it. And Rabbi Yochanan Omar, Afilu Shikva Zeresh Ima Masrechet, right? Chazal always assume that after intercourse, the semen, the zera, will remain active for 3 days. So she can become pregnant if she, let's say, her ovum comes down and can match up with the sperm, and she conceive within a 3-day period after the relationship that the husband and wife had. But because of the impact of this Ruach Mizrachis, the zera inside her body will become putrid and she can't become pregnant. They had a pasuk in Hosea, and they all, interpreted this pasuk. Each part of the pasuk indicates another catastrophic impact of the Ruach Mizrachis. The pasuk says, "Ki hu bein achim yafri yovo kadim ruach Hashem yibar ola v'yevosh mekora v'yechrav mayon." So let's go through this pasuk. Yevosh mekora zu mekora shel isha. So this is a reference to the womb of a woman, where the baby, the fetus, is located. And the pasuk is telling us, Yavo Kadim Ruach, meaning the Ruach Kadim, the Ruach Mizrachis, and Yevosh Makara. That ubar that's inside her body will be dried up. Now the next part of the pasuk says, V'yechrav Mayana, and Zeshif Aser Shabimei Ima. And then the pasuk, which is Shmuel, right? And then we get to the end of the pasuk, which is Rabbi Yochanan's interpretation. Hu yishsa otzar kol klichem dezumar gola shavia. Omar Rava adi. Adi means this drasha is surahu. It's from the Bnei Surah the Daiki Kroi. So the Bnei Surah were known for their expertise in interpreting a pasuk. Now, once we have this pasuk, let's look at the end of the pasuk, which says, Ki hu bein ha'achim. Just 1 second. Yafri. What does that mean? Omar Rova. Here we turn to Lamed Beis to make a siyum on the third parak of Gittin. It's Hashem Shufta bekofina demara. Even the handle that is attached to a shovel, even that rafia, right, will come. It will become loose and it'll eventually disconnect. It'll fall off. That's how powerful this ruach is. Even if, let's say, you take a nail and you knock it into the wall, rafia, all of a sudden it becomes loose. And Rav Achbar Yaakov afilu kanya bekufta rafia. Even the kana arug besal, which is made of nitzorim, even that becomes loose because of the hot air that comes from the ruach mizrachis that dries everything up in the sal. Hadron alecha kol haget, and in Mirza Hashem, our homework for Shabbos is to begin Perik Revi on Daf Lamed Beis. So Leiv and Shabbos, Shabbos and Leiv, and then in Mirza Hashem B'li Neder on Yom Rishon we start Daf Lamed Gimel. And I want to wish you a great Shabbos and thank you for a wonderful week of learning together. We should continue Keni Ratzon Ameh.